The first commandment is, you shall not worship any false gods. But how do we do that today? You actually might be surprised because the human being is made to worship. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Ignition, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, and we want to set your faith ablaze so that you might live the adventure that comes from a relationship with Jesus Christ. Before we get into today's topic, we want you to know that we love listener feedback. So if you've got questions about today's episode, or if you have ideas for future episodes, please contact us. And the easiest way to do that is by email, and the address is ignition@sfcatholic.org. Again, ignition@sfcatholic.org. I'm joined in studio by my occasional guest, Dr. Jason Heron. Hi, Jason.
Chris.
We're going to talk about false idols today, Jason.
False idols. Sounds good.
Before we talk about false idols and worship, would you mind introducing yourself to, well, since you were here last, listeners or viewers? Now they get to see you.
Now they get to see me. I'm Jason Heron. I teach theology and philosophy and sometimes English down at Mount Marty University in Yankton. I'm married to Hannah. We're going on 20 years next year. So 19.
So you're going on 19 right now.
Yeah, but 20 is the big one. In my mind, we've already made it to 20. And we have 6 kids: Margot, Eloise, James, Thomas, Francis, and Lily. And I have a mother-in-law too. She lives with us. We live together. And we've been in Yankton. I'm completing my 4th academic year at Mount Marty. So we've been here since fall of 17. And thanks for having me.
And if you haven't listened, Jason and I did a series where I was more interviewing him really on the cardinal virtues.
Yeah, that's right.
And do you remember what the recurring theme of said series
was?
How
could I forget? It's Tom Brady.
Tom Brady. Who's, of course, since then moved on to warmer pastures. I won't
won another Super Bowl.
But won another Super Bowl. So prudence.
Just proving everything that we said.
And we're not really Brady fans, but he just worked for the.
I just love excellence. I had a teacher at the University of Dayton where I did my doctoral studies, Dr. William Portier, and he just said once, "Excellence makes me cry." I love seeing it. And I thought, that's true.
If that fit more with the theme, maybe it will fit. Who knows? Maybe we'll make it fit. But I'd love that to title this episode "Excellence Makes Me Cry."
Yeah, maybe a subsequent episode.
Maybe. So false idols.
False idols.
Dr. Heron, do you
do I worship
have
any?
A little statue in your closet that you drop a pinch of incense on? False idols. Come on, we don't worship false idols. That's the ancient pagans thousands of years ago. Nobody really disobeys the first commandment anymore, do they?
No, of course not.
No.
So, if we're thinking about false idols strictly in terms of like physical idols, little carved things, then it seems irrelevant to anyone who's going to be watching or listening to this. Although, maybe not. So we have to think in more spiritual terms about gods that we place out of order in our life, or loves that we place out of order in our life, such that they've become functional gods. So, anyone who is capable of loving is capable of loving wrongly, and so all humans are capable of worshiping something in the wrong place, or putting something in the wrong place. Sorry, and then worshiping it. So. And really, I think where we're going to spend most of our time talking about is the W word that you just used, worship. I think because so we'll just see where this goes, but in some way, I think for the typical, probably more secularized modern, the idea of worship seems somehow demeaning. The idea of me being the autonomous individual. I don't want to worship anything, and worshiping, that's not what a mature human, that's superstition from the old days. We need to grow beyond that. Sure. But you take it whatever direction you want to go to start with. I think that's a great place to start. Just encouraging all of us, no matter how modern and sophisticated we feel, to own the fact that we
we put the things that we love in life in some sort of order.
Okay.
And so there has to be some
Something
highest
at the
love.
top.
And you can have a highest love on purpose, or you can have it by default. And when I speak about this with my students at Mount Marty, it's usually in the context of a great commencement speech given by the American novelist David Foster Wallace.
Yeah.
The speech is called "This Is Water." You can listen to it for free on YouTube.
This is Water.
This is Water.
David Foster Wallace.
It's 20 minutes long. It's well worth it. It's changed a lot of my students' lives, and it's like a touchstone in all of my classes. And
should we just spend the rest of this episode of Ignition watching David Foster?
Right.
No, maybe not.
YouTube inside of YouTube inside of YouTube. But it's interesting because David Foster Wallace was not a Christian, and I think he was I don't know a lot about his biography, but I think he was probably agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up tragically killing himself in maybe 2008.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
And he has, in this commencement address that he's giving at Kenyon College, he has this great moment where he says, one of the strange things about adult life is that there's really no such thing as an atheist. And then he goes on to clarify and says, what he means is there's really no such thing as not worshiping. And this throws my students for a loop because I think by default they would say, well, what do you mean I don't worship anything?
Yeah.
And so he makes a distinction between worshiping, he says a spiritual type thing, and then he says like JC or Allah or the Wiccan mother goddess or the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism or some inviolable set of ethical principles. He gives that sort of short list of spiritual type things to worship.
Mm-hmm.
Then he gives a different list of other things that we typically worship, and he lists money, intelligence, sexual allure, and like physical fitness and prowess and beauty, power. You could probably throw in there pleasure, though he doesn't list that there. He says that if you worship that second group, money, beauty, intelligence, power, they'll eat you alive. Those gods will eat you alive. So you might want to think about one of those spiritual type things to worship. So he's not really commending any specific way of life. He's just noting the insight of a pretty old piece of wisdom, which is that when we put money, beauty, power, intelligence, pleasure, all those things that we love, and they're all good, but when we put them at the very top of the things that we love and we organize our life according to those things, they eat us alive.
So why do we call? So I want to get into this list, but why? What's the argument for, rather than the bald assertion that my top love, I worship the thing that I love the most? Well, why does that have to be the case? Why
that we use the word worship?
Yeah. Because people I think when most people think of worship, they think of something like that we quote unquote bow down to or kneel to or whatever,
right.
a god, a deity. Well, I don't bow down to my bank account.
Right.
What do you mean I worship my bank account?
So that's a great question, because I think it pushes us to recognize that worship is always tied to sacrifice. And so the thing you sacrifice everything else for is the thing you worship. And when you connect worship and sacrifice, and then you start talking about money or physical beauty or intelligence or power or pleasure, and you start to think about all the time and effort and relationships that you sacrifice for that thing, whichever one of those things on the list that you would want to choose, then if you acknowledge that worship involves sacrifice, it's easy to make the jump over to say,
Sure.
oh, yes, that's why you would say I worship money, because I've sacrificed
time, whatever,
in order to serve that.
Okay.
So you have like those those loves, money, beauty, pleasure, power, intelligence, they're good. They're good things. They're goods that it's okay to love them, but they need to be loved in the proper place in life. And most of us,
Proper order, right? Then
they should be put in the proper order.
Okay.
And most of us have trouble doing that.
Yeah.
And the sign that we have trouble doing that is that we're willing to sacrifice things that are higher for those lower things. So like the thing that I talk about with my students is just how often we've seen, especially at Christmas time, stories about usually dads who are workaholics and very wealthy, and their kids are just sort of languishing, waiting for their dad to notice them. And then they're all just basically retellings of A Christmas Carol, right? Waiting for somebody to have the turn and say, oh, wait, I've been worshiping. I've sacrificed everything in my life for this one good.
Yep.
And it actually hasn't brought me happiness. It hasn't made me good. It hasn't, in fact, it's destroyed my life. So we retell, that's why A Christmas Carol is A Christmas Carol. We retell the story of Scrooge. We've been retelling the story of Scrooge since, I don't know when. I mean,
Since probably before Dickens wrote.
Absolutely before Dickens wrote, thousands of years.
Yeah.
And so in the speech that I referred to, This is Water, Wallace calls this the skeleton of every great story. And he says it's been codified in myths and fables and little moralistic teachings for centuries. And you could say, well, this is just such a cliche idea. I mean, these Christmas movies that are retelling A Christmas Carol are just all cliche, but they're cliche for a reason. We just keep having the same problem over and over again, and no one seems to. I shouldn't say no one, but we seem to have trouble absorbing the lesson and putting it into practice. It makes me think of in Spe Salvi, in
Pope Benedict's encyclical.
Yeah. Paragraph.
Hold up to it, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't know. It's in the 20s, I think. I don't know. I can't remember which paragraph. But he talks about like the need for every single generation.
Oh, yep.
To recommit to the good.
Yes.
Because just because my grandparents were good people doesn't mean that somehow I'm all set morally and spiritually. Every generation has to recommit. And so this is one of
Unlike
those.
other forms of capital or other forms of progress where it can be cumulative.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, that's an important distinction.
There's a moral, spiritual, quote unquote, capital is not cumulative. Every generation has to, quote unquote, reacquire it.
Right. So all our medicine and technology have progressed at an astounding rate, but we're no better off morally than we've ever been because every generation has to
so it's
recommit.
Possible and evident that some generations are less off in a moral, spiritual sense.
There's kind of I can do this now because this is on video.
Yes.
But the listeners need to know that I'm making a wave with my hand. There's a little bit of up and down from generation to generation, maybe.
Yeah.
But there's we're pretty close to like this moral baseline.
Yep. Okay.
And so we retell these stories because every generation needs them. And it's because every generation struggles with what to worship. In other words, what to love the most and what to sacrifice to.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Ignition, and it's Christmas in May. I mean, talking today with Dr. Jason Heron from Mount Marty University about what we worship and the ways that you might be surprised the ways in which we worship things that we maybe never would think that we do. Okay, so you've been teaching, so I'm going to hold your feet to the fire here. So give me, people are listening, okay, but what do you mean by worship? Give me a definition of worship because when I thought a definition, what I said earlier, like to bow down, to pray to, clearly you're using it in a different sense. So can you define the term for me? You said it's related to sacrifice, but still, what is worship in the way that you're using it?
Yeah, so buried in the word worship is the word worth. So you're ascribing, and not my favorite word, just because we never use it, ascribing.
There's a song that goes, ascribe to the Lord. But anyway.
Right, the glory due his name. You're pronouncing on the worth of something. And so the speech that I referenced by David Foster Wallace, you can pronounce or ascribe the worth of something on purpose, or you can do it unconsciously. You don't have a choice, though. You will ascribe the worth to something.
The highest worth for you, what you see as the highest worth, you will ascribe.
This is worth all my time, all my energy. This was worth my relationships. And what else do we have? I mean, you could throw in money, I guess.
Sure.
But you don't have to have money to worship things. So
right.
I don't know what else we have to give.
Yep.
My talent.
Yep.
Right. You're going to devote yourself to something. The only choice is whether you do it consciously and unconsciously. And then if you choose to do it consciously, then you have a variety of takers that are all willing to receive our sacrifices.
Right.
So if we stick with Wallace's language, you might want to choose something that's not going to eat you alive.
So just to spell that out for folks then. All right. So the list, money, power, beauty, intelligence, physical prowess, that sort of thing. I added to the list honor.
Sure. Reputation,
right. Fame. The Romans really worship. I mean,
this really bugs my students. I mean, in a good way. They recognize that their lives on social media are a constant contest for honor and reputation and comparison with each other, and trying to present themselves in the best way possible, and all the effort and energy that goes into that is really taxing.
So how, just to spell out, to be explicit about this, how will any of these eat me alive?
If we judge by the history of worshiping them, they don't seem to enhance our humanity. They don't seem to make us more of who we are and who we're created to be. They seem to diminish parts of us, or even our entire lives. They destroy relationships. Disordered loves destroy. There's great imagery from some of the ancient Greek philosophers of like pursuing this list of potential gods, potential highest loves, as trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it. You're constantly giving to it,
yep,
and losing at the same time, and that cycle, it wears away at you. I don't know why, but that sound just made me lose my train of thought. Sorry.
Sorry.
It's okay.
The mic boom and
it's okay. Yeah, they wear away at you. They don't enhance your personhood. They in fact cost you your personhood. If we're judging by the history of people who've worshipped them or sacrificed for them.
For example?
Well, I mean, it's hard to choose a better example than the story of Scrooge. But I think that if we look at our own family stories, we can usually find someone who put work, even for good intentions, right? I'm just going to work so I can provide for my family. And the intention's great, but what they've sacrificed is the actual relationship that they were trying to serve, because they were just working. So I've got that in my family. Okay. Not my parents, mom and dad. If you're going to watch this, you guys actually really were I love you. Thank you for not doing that to me and to my sisters. But yeah, a little further back in my story.
Okay.
So the rubric or the criterion you would use to judge whether something was worth worshiping is whether or not it makes you more human rather than less human. If it increases or strengthens the bonds of relationship in your life and actually makes you more at home in your own skin over time, rather than feeling out of place and frustrated and dissatisfied and depleted.
That's the rubric we should follow, but we don't. Right? I mean, that's right. I mean,
yeah,
we too often worship all these other things that don't make us more human.
Right. And they don't, St. Augustine said, we all want to be happy.
Yep.
It's a truism. But we don't just want to be happy. We want to be like imperturbably happy. We want to
imperturbably happy.
Man.
Imperturbably.
Yeah.
That's 5 syllables.
5 syllables.
Jason.
These Latinate words. We got to find an Anglo-Saxon word.
Always.
Yeah.
No, like unshakably, right?
Yeah.
Imperturbably.
So you would have all these great words for that: serenity,
Yes.
bliss,
Yes.
nirvana, beatitude, contentment. Where the thing you're worshiping is actually increasing your ability to be at peace in your life, rather than creating more and more frenetic and anxious activity to try to fill that bucket that's got the hole in it.
So why do we keep worshiping money, power, honor, intelligence, beauty, reputation, fame?
They're so awesome. I mean, you can buy stuff. It's nice to look good. I mean, I don't happen to, but I hear that it's wonderful to be fit. I've been told that beauty is wonderful to possess.
So they're goods.
Yeah.
These are all good things.
Right. So my students go here immediately. They say, "So you're telling me, Professor, that I shouldn't?
You're telling me
that I shouldn't like work for money?" I'm just like, no. No, that's not the point.
False dichotomy.
It's just right. Yeah, it's not an all or nothing sort of thing here. That's why it's important that the loves are
ordered
in a hierarchy. And that's just a lifetime project, I think. There's no one who's just like hit 25, got all your loves in order, and then you're all set for the rest of your
I can think of 2.
rest of your life.
Jesus and Mary.
Well, sure. Sure. But for their children, the rest of us poor saps, we're prone to put the secondary thing first, to put the 5th thing first, maybe the 10th thing first.
We misorder things.
So it's a pretty Augustinian point. We need to think about the order of our loves. And that's a really great reason to do a nightly examine. How did I spend my day? How am I organizing my time and my energy? What am I actually devoting myself to? It's a continual struggle.
I'm going to take that in a tangent for a minute, just briefly.
Why not?
It's a podcast. We can do whatever we want. I was down in Yankton just a couple weeks ago, as you know. I didn't see you there though, because
I love my family more than I love you.
For good.
So
fine.
There you have it.
On the way home, long day, tired in my mind. I have long days, and when I go home, I want to decompress, and so my imagination just want to sit in front of the TV and watch something and mindlessly eat like tortilla chips or something.
Sounds awesome.
And but thanks be to God, I'm like, why do you want? Is this really going to make you happy? Why not spend the time talking with your wife instead? Which, thanks be to God, I did instead. But I in my mind, I'm like, that's going to that's going to satisfy me. I'm going to be satisfied by doing that, and it never does.
Yeah. I like that example because we're not talking about, look, either you're going to be a disciple of Jesus or Scrooge.
Right.
That's not real. The drama of this is more like, my wife will actually forgive me for just sitting in front of the TV and eating. And I would choose tortilla chips too.
With some salsa, medium.
Yeah.
Not to picante.
You'll be forgiven. It's understandable.
Yeah.
And it will actually bring you contentment. It's just not the sort that, I don't know, vegging out is sometimes important. Sometimes. But the question of what's going to bring me contentment It happens in tiny ways like that, and more broadly in like larger patterns throughout life. So if there were a Wednesday when you just needed to do that, that'd be okay, I think. If there were 3 years of your life where that's all you did and your wife realized that she didn't know you anymore,
Right.
that would be a problem.
That would be a problem because I
Right.
sacrificed
Right.
my time
Yeah.
and my spousal relationship, my
Yeah.
marriage.
I just had this same thing happen to me. The semester has been very long. I'm nearing the end. This is my last week of classes. And I came home. I doubt any of my students will watch this, but I did share this if any of you are watching in class. And I wanted to do the exact same thing. We have this fire pit in our backyard, these like outdoor couches. And I lay down. Fire's going, the smoke's going up into the trees. And I feel that I have nothing left. And I just want to stare and listen to the fire crackle. And then my kids come running out of the house and say, Dad, do you want to go ride bikes? I thought, absolutely not. Never. Let's sell all the bikes. And I made the choice to go ride with them.
Yep.
And it actually did bring me a level of contentment that I could not have expected. The desire to veg out is basically bottomless for me.
Oh, yeah.
That is a bucket with a giant hole in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So, this is going to be to be continued because
Sure.
there's a lot more. But this conversation is a bottomless hole,
Right.
in a good way. Where I do want to unpack this more, but we basically have run out of time. Just to tease you, Jason, although you're going to hear it in a couple of minutes, but the listeners are going to have to wait a week. I'm going to talk about daddy-daughter dances in the context of what we're just finishing up on.
Okay.
But folks, so stay tuned for the next episode of Ignition. We're going to continue talking with Dr. Jason Heron about worshiping well, I guess. So we focused on the bad. We need to turn to the good, don't you think?
Sure.
So stay tuned for our next episode of Ignition, and we'll talk about how we worship well and what that results in for us. And we'll wrap up this episode of Ignition. Again, you can email us, ignition@sfcatholic.org, with any thoughts, questions, or ideas for future episodes. And until next time, may God bless you.